From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight: Israeli forces have killed 107 Palestinians and wounded 142 others in Gaza over the last 24 hours, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. It says Israeli forces have committed 13 massacres against families. Israeli airstrikes demolished homes and roads in various camps in Gaza, causing extensive destruction and casualties. Israeli snipers in Khan Yunis killed at least 21 people outside of Nasser Hospital, with medical staff also being targeted. Another 23 Palestinians were killed in a series of violent Israeli raids targeting the residential areas, including a kindergarten sheltering displaced people. In Rafah, medical sources at the Kuwaiti hospital reports that 8 Palestinians were killed in a bombing that targeted 2 homes belonging to the Al Syed and Al Nahal families. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has condemned Israel's actions, emphasizing collective diplomatic action and supporting the establishment of a Palestinian state. Erdogan emphasized the crucial importance of unity amongst young Muslims, pointing to ongoing massacres in Gaza and the occupied Palestinian territories. Since October 7th, Israel's war on Palestine has resulted in 27,947 deaths and 67,459 wounded by Israeli attacks. The death toll in Israel from the October 7th Hamas attack stands at 1,139. Israel forces shot dead 2 brothers in Gaza who were attempting to evacuate under a white flag. 15-year-old Nahid Barbak and his older brother Ramiz were killed. Nahid was struck first, and as Ramiz rushed to his aid, he too was shot dead. Their father, Muhammad Abdul Barbak, had sent them out believing the white flag would protect them from harm. According to the family's testimony, as Nahid took a few steps outside the door, he was shot in the legs and fell to the ground. As he attempted to return to the safety of his house, he was shot twice more, once in the back and once in the head. The murders reflect a pattern of disregard for the white flag's significance by the Israeli forces. The Israeli army recently killed a Palestinian grandmother and her grandchild who were waving a white flag, and a cameraman captured the fatal shooting of another man who was also carrying the flag. Far-right Israeli groups staged a demonstration outside the Israeli Knesset in Jerusalem on Thursday, calling for the continuation of war and the refusal to sign a ceasefire agreement with Hamas. The Israeli offensive has left 85% of Gaza's population internally displaced. This is amid acute shortages of food, clean water, and medicine, while 60% of the enclave's infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed, as per the UN reports. The Khaldi Mosque, a significant religious structure in Gaza, has been rendered unusable following relentless Israeli attacks spanning more than 4 months. Constructed with inspiration from the Ottoman architecture and located along the coastline, the mosque was a cherished destination for Palestinians. Israel forces targeted and destroyed the mosque in October, leaving behind nothing but a pile of rubble and a solitary minaret. Once boasting 2 tall minarets and a majestic dome, the mosque, which was completed in 2010, held a capacity of 500 worshippers, with its courtyard accommodating an additional 500. Al-Khaldi is not the only mosque the Israeli forces have destroyed. The Grand Omari Mosque, considered the largest and oldest mosque in Gaza, located east of Gaza City, also suffered severe damage. Israeli forces have destroyed 183 mosques, caused partial destruction of 264 mosques, and serious damage to 3 churches since October. Missiles and bombs, some weighing up to more than 4,000 pounds, were reported to have been dropped directly on these religious structures. The Palestinian Ministry of Culture has inaugurated the exhibition 100 Paintings from Gaza in Ramallah, showcasing works by local artists. The exhibition premiered at the Al Jalil Hall in the museum, which is dedicated to the late Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish in Ramallah. Opening ceremony attendees included Culture Minister Atif Abu Saif, Deputy Secretary General of Fatah's Central Committee Sabri Saidam, with various artists and writers. Abu Saif says the works were initially intended for display in exhibitions across the West Bank and beyond to underscore Gaza's contributions to Palestinian culture. Organizers emphasize that these paintings represent some of the few surviving artworks from Israel's war on Gaza, including a piece by the late Palestinian artist Hibat Zaqut. She was killed in an Israeli bombardment on Gaza on October 15th. The Ministry of Culture also dedicated a special section of the exhibition to commemorate Zahra. As well, on the sidelines of the exhibition, Palestinian artist Abdul Hadi Yaish created a portrait of Zahra reflecting on her legacy and the impact of her artistic vision. It features her picture alongside works by 24 other artists, of whom many have been displaced to Rafah in southern Gaza. Michigan Muslims boycott Biden officials for supporting Israel's war on Gaza. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Arab Americans are calling for a boycott of senior officials in the administration of President Joe Biden who are visiting Dearborn, Michigan. They include Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, Samantha Power, Director of the Office of Public Engagement, Stephen Benjamin, and White House Liaison to American Muslim Communities, Mazen Basrawi. The officials' trip is aimed at engaging with Arab American leaders and community members and has sparked controversy and protests. The Arab American Political Action Committee has urged a boycott until the White House calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. No major Muslim or Arab groups will attend the meetings, despite attempts by officials to engage with the communities. The Biden administration's support of Israel's war, which has killed over 27,000 Palestinians, mostly children and women, has significantly reduced Biden's popularity amongst Arab and Muslim Americans. Muslim groups say the administration's perceived attempt to divide the community will be met with failure. They have called for unity of all Muslim groups to force the Biden administration to stop supporting Israeli aggression on Palestine. Orland Park, Illinois Mayor Keith Picou is facing criticism and calls for an apology following his controversial remarks at a recent village board meeting. The incident occurred when Arab American residents called for a resolution supporting a ceasefire in Israel's war on Palestine, presenting a petition with 800 signatures. In response to the passionate appeals, Picou asserted his allegiance solely to America and suggested those who felt differently could leave the country. The comment sparked outrage, with the Council on American Islamic Relations condemning it as ignorant and dangerous. The Muslim Civil Rights Organization likened the sentiment to attitudes found in the 1960s former Soviet Union and counter to American principles of free speech. Picou defended his stance, saying that local government would not get involved in international conflicts and upheld America's support for a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue. Orland Park, a suburb of Chicago, is home to a significant population of Palestinian Americans. President Joe Biden has addressed growing concerns over his memory following a controversial report from the Justice Department. Biden was responding to the document that raised questions about his ability to recall key events and facts. It was issued by special counsel Robert Hur, who described Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory. The investigation focused on Biden's handling of highly classified materials during his tenure as a senator and vice president. Despite the scrutiny, Biden emphasized his cooperation with the investigation, highlighting a 5-hour interview he gave a few months ago. When pressed by reporters about his memory, Biden stressed, "My memory is fine." However, the document highlighted moments of confusion. One of these was when Biden mistakenly referred to Egyptian leader Abdel Fattah el-Sisi as the president of Mexico during a discussion in the humanitarian situation in Gaza. The president's remarks come amid ongoing scrutiny over his cognitive abilities, raising questions about his fitness to lead. A group of protesters gathered outside the Supreme Court during a hearing concerning Donald Trump's eligibility for the presidential ballot in Colorado. The case revolves around whether Trump's involvement in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol disqualifies him from appearing on the ballot. Colorado's top court previously ruled Trump ineligible under the Constitution's insurrectionist clause, leading to appeals to the Supreme Court. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution prohibits individuals who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the U.S. or who have been determined to have given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof from holding public office. Justices expressed concerns about the potential precedent and political consequences of allowing individual states to keep a person off the presidential ballot because they participated in an insurrection. The decision will have implications for Trump's potential candidacy and broader electoral processes. Such a case has no precedent in American history. States are given broad power to conduct their electoral processes so long as they comply with federal law. Trump's attorneys argue that the insurrectionist clause does not apply because the president is not an officer of the U.S. and that the clause is not self-executing. They say the clause cannot be implemented without congressional action. But lawyers who sought to keep Trump off the ballot say the state has just as much authority to enforce the 14th Amendment as it does other constitutionally mandated qualifications for America's highest office. In related news, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is facing criticism for his involvement in a case challenging Donald Trump's eligibility for a second term as president. Critics expressed concern about his impartiality due to Thomas's wife's role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Progressive watchdogs and observers argue that Thomas should rescue himself, pointing out the conflict of interest posed by Ginny Thomas's involvement in the January 6th insurrection. The case Trump versus Anderson centers on whether the former president can run again after allegations of insurrection. Senior Associate of Policy and Political Affairs at the group Stand Up America, Tishanwira Surya, says if Thomas refuses, it will be a blatant denial of impartial review, as well as a rejection of recently issued code of conduct. Major car makers, including Toyota, General Motors, Tesla, BYD, and Volkswagen, may be using aluminum produced with forced labor in northwest China. A Human Rights Watch report alleges nearly 10% of the world's aluminum is produced in the region, where Uyghurs and other minorities have been subjected to forced labor in detention centers. The report says engine blocks, vehicle frames, wheels, lithium-ion battery foils, and other components may contain aluminum from these facilities or joint ventures these major car makers have with Chinese companies. It acknowledges the origins of aluminum from northwest China are difficult to trace because the metal is sent to other parts of China. It is melted down and made into alloys that enter global supply chains undetected. Human Rights Watch says car makers are not doing enough to ensure their supply chains are free of forced labor. The group says some car makers have given into government pressure to apply weaker human rights standards in their Chinese joint ventures than in other global operations. Car makers have denied the allegations and say they are committed to ethical sourcing practices. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Chinese companies involved in forced labor in northwest China. The European Union also is considering similar sanctions. Thailand's government and Muslim separatists in the south have made significant progress towards a peace deal after talks resumed in Malaysia following a year-long hiatus. Malaysian facilitator Zulkifli Zainal Abidin says both parties have agreed in principle to an updated peace roadmap, marking a major breakthrough. Discussions held in Kuala Lumpur aim to finalize a ceasefire during Ramadan and Songkran. Songkran marks the beginning of Thai New Year, celebrated every year from April 14 to April 15. Despite previous stalled efforts, Malaysia's mediation has continued since 2013. More than 7,000 casualties have resulted from the conflict in Thailand's Muslim-majority southern provinces since 2004. Ethnic and religious tensions drive the violence, with separatists accusing security forces of abuses. Amid hopes for a lasting solution, the Thai government, led by Prime Minister Srettha Thavisin, has committed to civilian-led negotiations. The signing of the peace plan hinges on further technical deliberations. Southern Thai Muslims whose ethnicity, culture, and language differ from the Buddhist majority believe they are treated as second-class citizens. Anas Abdul Rahman, head of the Barisan Revolusi Nasional Melayu Patani, the largest of the separatist groups, says he has high hopes for a lasting solution under the new government. Independent candidates supported by imprisoned former Prime Minister Imran Khan are emerging as frontrunners in Pakistan's elections. But the numbers are far from enough to form a government. While final results are awaited, Pakistan's three-time Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif called for a unity government as provisional election results indicated a hung federal government. Results began trickling in nearly 12 hours after polling for national and provincial assemblies concluded on Thursday. Using AI-generated message, jailed ex-premier Imran Khan claims victory in Pakistan's general elections. Khan was disqualified from running in Thursday's election due to criminal convictions he claims were politically motivated. He was imprisoned in the lead up to the election. His party's candidates ran as independents after being barred from using their party symbol, a cricket bat, by the Supreme Court and Election Commission. The election was marred by violence perpetrated by armed groups. It also faced criticism for the suspension of mobile phone services, which some labeled as political engineering. The military has reported at least 12 fatalities and 39 injuries nationwide due to attacks aimed at disrupting the electoral process. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.